Hello, and welcome to another one of these episodes that I'm calling Office Hours. It's where I sort of change up the pace on this channel, and instead of looking at the poetics of something or doing a lyric analysis, I just sort of want to review media that I've recently consumed. So this weekend, I was fortunate enough to see two great films, One Battle After Another, and then I also saw The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. So this video is going to be covering One Battle After Another, and just so be sure to check out my other video, which will be uploaded shortly after this one, which will be focusing on The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. So yeah, with that said, I think we can sort of jump right into it. All right, so I'm unfortunately a little short on time today. So we got classes early in the morning tomorrow. So I'm going to be doing this pretty quickly, and it's going to be a bit more sporadic than normal, but that might be fun. So for starters, let me make sure that this is all on screen. All right, so first thing I wanted to say is that this movie review will have some very mild spoilers through comparison to some of Leo's other works, such as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Wolf of Wall Street. So that's going to come up later, but I won't get into that just yet. So my initial thoughts and impressions on this movie is I really, I liked it, but I kind of feel like I didn't fully love it. And I'll get into that in a bit. But things I really liked was the cinematography was amazing. This felt like it was just, and it's by, Paul Thomas Anderson. So it's a movie made by someone who knows how to make movies, but I just wanted to also emphasize that it really felt like it was a movie that was made by someone who knew how to make movies. The camera work, the style, the pacing, the cuts, all of it was just really excellent. And again, also should be self-explanatory, but I'm going to have tons of spoilers for this movie itself within this discussion. So my spoiler-free review is that you should definitely check this out. Please also try to see it in theaters if you can. It's great to support the industry that way, but also I feel like this is one of those movies that is going to be best served being seen on the big screen. So that being said, anything from this point on is going to be spoiling the whole movie. So there's your warning. All right, so One Battle After Another. Amazing cinematography, cool, costume design. I feel like Leo's whole character design and his outfit of him wearing this like red flannel robe the entire movie was really cool. Just kind of looked iconic. I'm sure we're going to be seeing that on Halloween. I loved the dialogue was really good. It had kind of this cool snippy, and there was kind of cool stuff where there was code talk and code names, and a sort of had a cool beat to it in that sense. And so some of the scenes of the cinematography that I really liked, I feel like one of the most standout ones that everyone's probably going to be talking about is there's this really cool car chase scene where these cars are, pursuing each other, but they're on this really hilly road. And so the camera often stays focused right about at this point. So once a car goes over the apex of the hill, it can't be seen. And so there's this cool thing where, someone's being chased, but they can't fully tell if the car behind them is still there because from this point, they can't see this low into the sort of valley of these hills. And there's this really cool shot where the camera actually bobs with the hills, and it almost looks kind of like it's like you're seeing ocean waves. It almost gives this sort of fluidity to the road, which was really, really cool. It also had some really cool stuff where it showed it sort of how nefarious it's sort of villains were. There was some really creepy scenes which I wasn't expecting of this underground society that's just super evil and really creepy, and they also have all their code words and their own kind of whole secret society of how they knock on doors and all this stuff. But they also showed stuff which is felt like it was speaking to sort of modern times where, for example, there was a peaceful protest that was occurring, and then the cops actually plant people among the protesters to throw Molotov cocktails to basically give them the all clear to then engage the crowd in a violent way. And that's something that's being discussed a lot today. So stuff like that really created this sense of dread of this sort of like all-powerful, authoritative government, which felt poignant with just modern politics. And the acting was phenomenal across the board. So the actress who plays Leo's daughter is phenomenal. Leo is great. Just honestly everybody. And I think Benito, who I believe plays character who goes just by the name Sensei, he was phenomenal. I'm sorry, I'm not really good with actor names, and again, I'm sort of doing this on a rushed timeline, so I apologize that I can't give everybody's names as I go through this. But I feel like this movie is also probably going to sweep the Oscars because it was just really, really good and kind of feels like the type of movie that would do well there. I felt like with Leo's character, which I want to focus on a bit, I feel like when he goes by Rocket Man and something else, I think it's just Bob. Don't quote me on that. I'm sorry, just got out of these movies. But his performance was great, and so here is where I'm going to sort of be, drawing parallels to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Wolf of Wall Street, which is that this character of, Rocket Man is sort of a total mess. He abuses substances, he's sort of lost in the past, and as a result, he's not the most sharp-witted, he's not on top of his game, and as a result, there's a ton of like comedic acting that is being done by Leonardo DiCaprio, which I thought was really, really good. And it was super reminiscent of his substance-y acting with The Wolf of Wall Street. And with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you get a lot of hilarious moments where Leo's character in that movie is inebriated and he's yelling at Charlie Manson's sort of subordinates, and he's kind of belligerent about it, but in like a really hilarious way. It was just always fun when Leonardo DiCaprio was on screen, and just like I felt with these two movies, I constantly just felt like I wanted to see more of his character, and I was sort of bummed when it panned to a different character and he sort of faded into the background for a bit. So just really, really good. The one thing I do want to say, which is sort of one of my criticisms with this movie, is I felt like his character arc was sort of unsatisfying. And what's hard is I feel like some of that is intentional, because basically the movie is set up and the trailers make it look this way and everything, where it's going to be Leo's daughter gets into trouble and is kidnapped or being pursued by this sort of terrifying government force, and you think Leo's going to almost pull like a Liam Neeson's Taken, and not being as flashy and as like hand-to-hand combat-y as that, but you just think it's going to be about this like father who's going to go save his daughter and go against all these bad guys where the odds are stacked against him. And a good amount of the movie is dedicated to sort of building up that arc, and we spend a lot of time watching which ultimately kind of becomes like a slow burn of Leo's character slowly getting closer and closer to what you think is going to be this ultimately like explosive climax, but it never comes. In the end, it actually is more of a movie where it's about the daughter saves herself. So basically the daughter is dealing with the sins of her parents and sort of this history that she has nothing to do with, but she gets involved in it because of who she is, and she has to deal with the consequences with that and ultimately navigates it herself. And I've seen a couple people say that, she's able to navigate that because of the way her father raised her. So in a way, that father figure still helps, pull that off. But I feel like it's natural for the audience to still feel unsatisfied by not getting that sort of climax that they're expecting, even though it's just as satisfying watching the daughter do her whole thing, but that's satisfying for her arc. Like, that is really enjoyable to see as we watch her storyline play out. But as we watch Leo's storyline play out, it ultimately feels sort of disappointing. At least it did to me. That being said, my only other two criticisms I'm really going to bring up is, and I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this one, I felt like it was a little bit too long. And I don't mean that I don't like long movies. I mean that I don't think this movie necessarily had to be quite as long as it did. And, you know, I think some people will agree with me in that there's multiple moments throughout the movie, especially in the last, like, 3/4, I'd say, you know, the last act, where it really feels like, okay, it could end here. And I was expecting it to end there, and then it didn't. And then I was like, okay, well, it definitely is going to end here, and then it didn't. And then there was a moment where it's like, okay, like, again, spoilers, Sean Penn's character appears to be totally defeated. He's, you know, out of the game, and, you know, Leo and his daughter are reunited, and this other evil assassin is part of one of these, like, underground societies. He's been defeated by Leo's daughter, and it all seems like it's all, you know, wrapping up and it's all perfect. And then for some reason Sean Penn's character actually comes back, and it turns out he, you know, was not so soundly defeated. And it's sort of just to set up one final gag. And the thing is it was a great gag. Everyone in the audience was laughing in the moment where he, I don't even think I can say any of the dialogue for that in this review. But it sets up a gag where he is in a interview to try to get into this secret society, but he doesn't fully know that the secret society is the one who hired the assassin to go after him. And so there's sort of a dramatic irony there, but he ends up saying some really ridiculous things to try to serve as excuses for what they are investigating him for. But it was funny, but it also just sort of felt like, at the same time, I'm not totally sure it was fully necessary to fake his death just to bring him back again. And there was just multiple moments, like there's the moment where Leo finally reunites with her at the nunnery, but then a huge car chase ensues, and then there's the scene where she frees herself by the boat docks, and then there's another car chase. And then there's, okay, they finally reunite, but then they kind of drag it out where she's going into shock and doesn't fully recognize her dad. And so she's all like, you know, her father figure, I should say. And she's like, who are you? Who are you? And, you know, it's sort of tying it up because there's a whole plot line about, you know, it's one of the biggest plot lines about, you know, who her real father is, whether it's Leonardo DiCaprio's character or Sean Penn's character, whose name is Lockjaw. I can remember his name because, again, a lot of the characters in this movie have like code name-esque names. Some of them are their real names, like Lockjaw, and other ones are code names, like Leo's character is code name Rocket Man because he does like demolition stuff. So, yeah, so that sort of was one of my other gripes. And then my final gripe, which, again, I don't know if this is going to be, like, somewhat controversial. I felt like it ended on a really weird note. So the whole story is basically there's this group of revolutionaries, and one of the main leaders of the revolution and Leo's character, they both get together, and her name is, like, Beverly Hills, and he's Rocket Man. And they get together and they start a romance, but then she ultimately cheats on Rocket Man / Leo with Lockjaw. And then she has a daughter, and then she gets caught doing one of her revolutionary things and basically rats and gives up the names of all the other revolutionaries. So they all have to go into hiding. They all have to go dark, basically. And then years later, Lockjaw wants to join the secret society that's super racist. So he has to cover up the fact that he once had an affair with, you know, the leader of this revolution. And so he starts to pursue Rocket Man, Leo, and his daughter. And the mother figure in this whole thing, this, you know, Beverly Hills character, she's like considered to be a pretty bad person. She's not fully a villain. I guess, but she's definitely sort of an antagonist in that, she sells everybody out. She's super selfish. She cheats, which causes tons of conflict because she's not just cheating, she's cheating like with the leader of like the police faction that's been pursuing the revolutionaries. And then she sort of selfishly runs away from her family and abandons her daughter, which leaves Leo to have to raise this daughter all by himself. And it's unclear if he knows about the affair or not, and he's also has to like hide his identity because she sold him out and gave his name up to the cops, and the cops started like rounding everybody up and executing people and all sorts of stuff. So the mom character sort of ends up being sort of like this ghost in this story of the second half of the daughter's life, where the daughter's been told that her mom used to be this great hero, but she slowly finds out more and more by meeting the other revolutionaries that her mom was actually kind of a bad person. And so the movie, one of the last big things that happens is Leo gives his daughter a letter from her mom. And, I have not lived this daughter's experience, so I have no idea what headspace she might be in. I don't know if that's something that would be wanted because she's always wondering who her mom is, or if this was sort of uninvited because she's been having so much drama with the identity of her parents. But it also ultimately just feels weird that this mother character basically gets to have the last word. She's sort of, this last major monologue. There's, Leo gets some final dialogue where he's kind of joking with his daughter about how to work a camera phone and how to, take a selfie. And then his daughter runs off to join a protest. But it just felt weird that the movie, that basically the cause and effect of this entire movie is all about the mom's mistakes and all of her sins and all the big issues she brings up. All of that causes all of the different conflicts that happen in the plot. But then at the end, she sort of gets this undeserved reconciliation. Even though it's over a letter, she gets to have like the voiceover monologue and gets to explain how she feels about everything and how she wants to have a relationship with her daughter, and her daughter seems open to it. But as an audience member, I was just sort of like, I don't know if the mom deserves this because she hasn't done anything to redeem herself. The final thing she does is she goes into witness protection because she sold out all of her comrades, and then she doesn't like being in the boredom of witness protection, so she flees to Mexico and presumably has just been living a decent life in Mexico under a fake name. So, all the other revolutionaries kind of despise her and call her a rat. And again, the lockjaw person that she got with that, caused all this is such a despicable person. And also, with the whole revolution, you're kind of left wondering if she ever actually cared about the revolution, or if she just sort of enjoyed the bombastic lifestyle that came with it, if she was sort of just a thrill seeker. So, you have this person who's just this thrill seeker, abandons her family, cheats, abandons her comrades, leaves, flees to Mexico, lives a quiet life. Does she really deserve to have one of the last words in the whole movie? I kind of felt like no. I felt sort of unsatisfied by that, and sort of just kind of, I don't know, I just didn't feel like that was justified. I almost feel like it would have been better if the mom had just fully gone away. Because it also felt like, the daughter grew up so much beyond her mom. There's almost this thing of like, oh, her mom was a rat, so is she going to become a rat? And is she gonna be, or is she also, her mom was a revolutionary, is she gonna become a revolutionary and like also do that? Or is she going to, be totally separate like that? And alternatively, would she be like who ends up being her real father, which is Lockjaw? Is she going to be like a cop? What's she going to be like? And I felt like she grew so much beyond her mom, and she seemed really traumatized by all the events that were ultimately caused by her mom. So it just felt weird that the mom got that final note. And then right after that, there's a scene like I just described where Leo and his daughter character are both sitting on a couch, and they're, she's trying to teach him how to take a selfie with a flash on with his iPhone, which shows that he's gotten a bit more loose about needing phones or not, and surveillance and some of his paranoia. But it then ends with her running off to join like a sort of protest revolutionary thing. And I didn't fully catch if she's leaving to join like just a peaceful protest or if she's going to join like another sort of like underhanded secret revolution attack, because it comes on like on the radio sort of like it's a coded thing. But I don't know if it's going to be like, oh, the new generation is doing things differently, because one also has to wonder, did the revolution that Beverly Hills and everyone else did, are they going to, did they really accomplish anything? And so it feels sort of weird to see the daughter basically continue that and continue on that sort of legacy, because it almost felt like you were expecting it to be a movie where like the cycle ends with the daughter. She goes through all this trauma, all the basically old villains get eliminated, and so the bad guys are done, and a lot of the good guys are also done, and they're also gone. So she's sort of left on her own. It's just her and Leo. But it's unclear, by continuing this, is this supposed to be seen fully as a good thing? Because the hard part is, socially, it's good to protest. It's good to, stand up for your rights and do all of that stuff. So, it's not like I'm saying, oh, it's bad that she proceeded to, exert her freedom of speech and protest. But within the context of this very, very violent movie, I'm a little conflicted on whether it's good, because she seemed traumatized by the end of her little adventure, which almost was like her getting a glimpse of the revolutionary life. But yeah, I guess it's sort of up to debate if that's a good thing or not. I think people are going to see very different things with that. Other just sort of final thoughts is, again, I felt like the pacing dragged a little bit at the end. I also felt like there were some sort of weird messaging things where it seems like this is a very like liberal, left-leaning movie. The revolutionaries are, helping immigration people at detention centers and things like that. However, again, sometimes it almost felt like the revolutionaries were sort of violent and scary. So, for example, there's a scene where they attack a bank that seems like it's just normal citizens who are not evil, corrupt people, just working their day-to-day job to get their bills paid. And then these revolutionaries barge in, and it proceeds to get really violent and out of control. And it's one of those where it's like, are these revolutionaries good, or are they sort of just anarchists and agents of chaos? Because, again, with Beverly Hills as a character, we're unsure if she ever even really fully believed in the cause because she sold everybody out so quickly, or if she was just doing it for the thrill. And if she's just doing it for the thrill, are they really the good guys? So it's a little conflicting there. And then there was just some other weird kind of moments, like they build up that this one person is non-binary, and there's like this whole joke about they, them, and Leo not understanding pronouns. And then later, that group of friends is being interrogated about where this daughter character is, and it's the non-binary character who ultimately folds and betrays their friend and gives the daughter's location up, which kind of felt weird that they picked that character to be the one to do that. But that's all I'm going to get into in terms of the political stuff, because that's not really what this channel is about. But I just thought some of the messaging and themes were a little strange in that way. So if I had to review this movie for this sort of rapid fire first impression review, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10, because again, so much of the cinematography was awesome, so much of the story was fun, the dialogue was fun and quippy, tons of moments that got laughs, the villains were scary, a lot of the heroes and protagonists were compelling. It was fun following the sensei guy, it's fun following Leonardo DiCaprio's character, it was fun seeing the whole nunnery and all of that stuff, and the action was good and like felt like there was weight behind it, but I just felt it dragged a bit and got some of its messaging a little muddy, so that's why it's not getting a perfect 10 out of 10. But with that said, I think that's going to pretty much conclude this, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you want to see more of these. I have a lot of fun reviewing these movies. I love watching movies, something I do pretty much at least once a week. So I'd love to make more if you guys would be interested in seeing more of this. And please also let me know in the comments what you thought of this movie. Do you agree with my review? Do you not? What did you think of the ending? Is it an optimistic, hopeful ending, or is it a little bit like, oh no, the cycle continues and then this violence is going to just go on and on and on? Very curious to see what you thought about that. And also, don't forget to check out my next video, which will go up soon, which will be about The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. And also, don't forget to subscribe. So yeah, thanks guys. Bye.